welcome, welcome, welcome. It feels good to be back. Oh, and it feels triply good to have Gemma Matthewson in person again. She's been doing Zooming from home. Thank goodness we had that.
It feels great to be back.
Oh, good. Yeah. And we've got lots of color and lots to celebrate today. What are you celebrating today?
Well, I'm celebrating Gay Pride Month with you.
Thank you.
You know, that some of us are straight but not narrow, as we used to say in the 60s.
That's the 60s. Oh, yeah. It was a great phrase in the 60s.
So I hopefully, want to bring that to this poetry celebration today and celebrate all my friends and some of my relatives who are in, Gay Pride Month are feeling celebratory too.
Oh, that's great. In family, as we say.
Family,
yeah. And poets.
Definitely, and poets.
I'm really delighted you have chosen some really good ones for me to listen to. So, happy Gay Pride, and what else are you celebrating?
Well, I'm celebrating one of my granddaughters just graduated from 6th grade, going into junior high. My grandson is graduated from 5th grade, and he's going into a special school for just 6th graders in his community in Arlington, Mass. Which seems like a lot of fun, like a whole 300 plus school of just 6th graders.
Marvelous.
And my oldest granddaughter spent most of her school year at home virtually in school at Pioneer Valley Performing Arts School in Massachusetts. And they did a wonderful play, a musical called Girl from Mars, which is about two young women who discovered at summer camp that they were in love.
Marvelous.
And all about how that all played out and discovering themselves as young women. And 12 people contributed to this musical, wrote their own parts in the score, and it was performed, and I'm celebrating that too.
You are one happy and proud grandma.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a lot to be proud about. We're also celebrating Freedom Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth,
I love
absolutely.
Juneteenth, I've been doing that on New Haven Green, going to my friends and walking. And what else are we celebrating? Summer solstice.
Yeah.
For my grandson, who's New Age spirituality. And we're celebrating a kind of post-COVID ebullience, a joyfulness of just getting back as you are back today. And here we are. So, I'm going to take a deep breath and give you my personal moment, anecdotal experience with Allen Ginsberg. I'm wearing his Howl button today.
Oh,
and
great.
I think so much of gay pride literarily goes back to the New York poets first, then the San Francisco Renaissance. But there he was in Dublin. Whoa. I too am over Ginsberg, although I never resonated except when I heard him at Union Hall in Dublin, October 1993, while I was on sabbatical. It was a fluke moment as I sat in the park chatting up a handsome Irishman who mentioned the afternoon buzz about the reading that night. What reading? Later I shook Ginsberg's hand and said gamely, inanely, quote, "I had to come all the way to Dublin to hear you perform." "Why?" he retorted, "when I read all over the world." That was my up close and personal.
Oh boy, that's a great story.
A shake of the hand with someone really who started a lot.
You surely did.
1955. Wow. So reminisce with me. Let's go back a little.
Okay.
And even before that, who was a looming large female poet in the 19th century, early 20th?
So
Yeah.
I looking at the list of female gay poets, I came upon a poet that I had heard her name before, but I hadn't really known much about her. And once I started to research her and read her poetry, I couldn't move on from there. I said, yeah, people have heard of, all these other poets on the list, and I wanted to concentrate on this one for a while because she was interesting.
She caught you.
Yeah, she was born in 1874 in Boston, and she came. Her name is Amy Lowell. She came from the Boston Brahmin Lowell family.
Wow.
And she never went to college because her family didn't consider it proper for a young woman. But she was self-taught. She educated herself. She was a short and imposing figure who kept her hair in a bun and wore a pince nez. She publicly smoked cigars. She was overweight from a glandular problem. So all her life she was a short, rotund woman, and her admirers defended her, and but she also got some criticism too. One of her critics was, now I forget his name.
T.S. Eliot.
No, not T.S.
Oh, not that
Eliot.
one.
I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And anyway, she got a Pulitzer Prize for her poetry, What's a Clock? And it included patriotic poems. And one of the poems that I'm going to read to you today is about, it's called Patterns. It's one you mentioned to me because you said you had heard it in high school.
Yeah, high school, big
and
impression.
So her poems were, I'll just read this one and we can talk about it. Patterns. I walk down the garden paths, and all the daffodils are blowing, and the bright blue squills. I walk down the patterned garden paths in my stiff brocaded gown, with my powdered hair and jeweled fan. I too am a rare pattern as I wander down the garden paths. My dress is richly figured, and the train makes a pink and silver stain on the gravel and the thrift of the borders. Just a plate of current fashion, tripping by in high-heeled ribbon shoes. Not a softness anywhere about me, only whalebone and brocade. I sink on a seat in the shade of lime trees, for my passion wars against the stiff brocade. The daffodils and squills flutter in the breeze as they please. And I weep, for the lime trees is in blossom, and one small flower has dropped upon my bosom. And the splashing of water drops in the marble fountain comes down the garden path. The dripping never stops. Underneath my stiffened gown is the softness of a woman bathing in a marble basin, a basin in the midst of the hedges grown so thick she cannot see her lover hiding. But she guesses he is near, and the sliding of the water seems the stroking of a dear hand upon her. What is summer in fine brocaded gown? I should like to see it lying in a heap on the ground, all the pink and silver crumpled to the ground. So further on in the poem, I'm going to advance a little bit because it's quite long. In a month, he would have been my husband. In a month, here under this lime, we would have broken the pattern. He for me, I for him. He as colonel, I as lady, on the shady seat. He had a whim that sunlight carried blessing, and I answered, it shall be as you said, and now he is dead. In summer and in winter I shall walk up and down the patterned garden paths in my stiff brocaded gown. The squills and daffodils will give place to pillared roses and to asters and to snow. I shall go up and down in my gown, gorgeously arrayed, boned and stayed, and the softness of my body will be guarded from embrace by each button, hook, and lace. For the man who should lose me is dead, fighting with the Duke in Flanders in a pattern called war. Christ, what are patterns for?
Oh, that last line does resonate
Yeah.
through the ages.
So this poem that she's well known for is obviously a protest about war and how war keeps people in certain roles, certain patterns that serve nobody very well.
And the contrast between the passion and the brocaded stiff pattern
Right.
is so alive throughout the whole poem. She builds on that, and the tension builds, and then death of the early death. I mean, that is just
Right.
alone worth a poem, but
Yeah.
it's also culturally bound in the sense that I'm taking it from her life, the little I know. You say she's from the Brahmins.
Right.
Wow, that is a cultural straitjacket too. If you have this passion that's bursting through,
Right. The
Oh, I
corsets,
love that.
the corsets and the stiffness. And
she wants it in a pile in the ground.
Yeah,
Free
yeah,
me.
So I'll just read one more for now, and we can come back to her later if you want,
Yeah.
because I know we have so much to do. But so later on, she writes 12 love poems to her female companion, and they're so full of passion and not stiffness and not corseted. And so she's evolving herself as a person and as a poet. And this is they're
Beautiful.
short and beautiful. Summer rain. All night our room was outer walled with rain. Drops fell and flattened on the tin roof and rang like little discs of metal, ping, ping, and there was not a pinpoint of silence between them. The rain rattled and clashed, and the slats in the shutters danced and glittered. But to me, the darkness was red gold and crocus-colored with your brightness, and the words you whispered to me sprang up and flamed. Orange torches against the rain, torches against the wall of cool, silver rain. Isn't that beautiful?
It's gorgeous. And what she does with colors, that's carried over from patterns, which really is so minutely attentive to the subtleties of colors, and it's continued in this imagery in such a beautiful way. I feel that she was undervalued, underrated,
Yeah.
and she set a pattern in poetry herself of that wonderful rebellious spirit, which goes with the artist as a natural thing, but also in the cultural context too. Brahmins were buttoned up.
Yeah, they sure were. And expected to live out their own, very structured places in society. So.
And Edith Wharton, whammo, the brocade she had to break through in her cultural set.
Right, and the poet who clashed with her was Ezra Pound.
Yeah.
So that's
Excellent. He said she wasn't up to snuff, huh?
Yeah, he said she was hijacking the imagism movement. Which,
Oh, right.
yeah.
So she was trying to pull them back into the 20s rather than... No, earlier than that, when Ezra Pound came along.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see he's jealous.
He's
her
jealous,
image
exactly.
is so good that she hijacked it.
Yeah, and why would a woman...
Imagism.
How could a woman think she could do imagism?
That's beautiful.
Right.
Thank you for teasing that out.
Yeah.
We're going to listen to another female poet, much more contemporary, back in the 60s and 70s, Denise Levertov. And we mentioned her last show. And I did a little background reading, and she's so multicultural, multi-religious, multi-faceted in her abilities to hit all the high spots in the poetry. And rebellious, yes. So she walked the walk in the protest for the Vietnam War. So I'm not sure what we have in terms of the content of this poem, but I want to hear her voice
Okay.
because she was displayed. So let's go with Denise. That would be wonderful. I want to hear her voice.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear this too.
Two girls discover the secret of life in a sudden line of poetry. I, who don't know the secret, wrote the line. They told me, through a third person, they had found it, but not what it was, not even what line it was. No doubt, by now, more than a week later, they have forgotten the secret, the line, the name of the poem. I love them for finding what I can't find, and for loving me for the line I wrote, and for forgetting it so that 1,000 times till death finds them, they may discover it again in other lines, in other happenings, and for wanting to know it, for assuming there is such a secret, yes, for that most of all.
Delicious sound, British accent that's attenuated. She's sort of letting it go because she's now an American, naturalized citizen, and from New York and the New York School, although originally Olson and the Rocky Mountain Group, North Carolina, through New York, and then she moves to Seattle. But I wanted to hear the voice.
Yeah.
Oh, and I loved it.
I love the theme of shared experience, and the experience itself being less important of a focus than just the joy of sharing experiences and the memory of shared experience itself.
I heard that, joy.
Yeah.
What a beautiful poem that happenstance, willy-nilly, it's in our collection. We're going to make a jump to good old Alan, because we have his voice.
Oh, good.
And it's from Howl. This is kind of a big step for us, because we heard his short one last time. This is 2+ minutes.
Oh, good.
The voice. Good old Alan.
Howl for Carl Solomon. 1. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves to the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats floating across the tops of cities contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant, cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake-light tragedy among the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall, who got busted in their pubic beards returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death, or purgatoried their torsos night after night, with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls, incomparable blind streaks of shuddering cloud and lightning in the mind, leaping toward poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time between, peyote solidities of walls, backyard green tree cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront burrows of tea-head joyride neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusks of Brooklyn, ash can rantings and kind king light of mine, who chained themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Bronx on Benzedrine until the noise of wheels and children brought them down, shuddering, mouth-racked and battered, bleak of drain, all drained of brilliance in the drear light of zoo, who sank all night in submarine light of Bickfords, floated out and sat to the stale beer afternoon in desolate Fugazis, listening to the crack of doom on the hydrogen jukebox.
Wow.
Yeah.
Triple wow. Wow, wow, wow. And this is what happened in Dublin. All that fuss. But the Irish in the front rows went nuts. Went more nuts as his playing and chanting grew louder, then stomping and shouting, screaming, which of course was from 300 years of bitter repression by the Brits and the Catholic Church and self-hatred. See Parnell and Kitty. Whoa! He brought the house down. He almost literally brought the house down because the 300 Irish in the audience went stark crazy nuts. Pounding, shouting, screaming, jumping over the seats. And for a minute there, I thought, we're going to have a riot. Irish is supposed to be buttoned up.
Oh, you
What's
think so?
going on? It was a moment for
that's
me
a great
anyway. I'm
moment.
old.
Yeah.
And I was still old in 93, but oh man, that was some experience.
It's a
for
great
a first
experience.
time to hear him.
I only saw him live once.
Uh-huh.
He was part of the Free Tibet concerts that they had in New York. Well, they still have in New York City.
Good old Alan.
And I think it was just a year or two before he passed away.
Yeah.
And it was the Skeletons poem, and that was another anti-war poem or anti-war machine poem that he had written. And you talked at the beginning of this reading about his pace and how it was slow at the beginning, and you were surprised.
Yeah.
And then it picked up and up and up, and he built with it. And that's the whole joy of reading. I mean, of hearing poetry instead of just reading it, because you know where the writer's engagement is when you hear their voice and you hear them read. And when he performed Skeletons, it was as a musical piece. He was singing it. He was like almost rapping it along with a musical accompaniment.
And chanting?
Yeah, chant rap kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was faster than he would have read the first part of this one, the one that we just heard.
This is a great example because it was like, whoa, that even surprised me.
Yeah.
Really attenuated, really slow, and then
built up.
Yeah, so the end of Howl, that's going to be a howl.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, thank you, Jim. I really enjoyed that. Your description of the passion in the voice that worked. Yeah. And you heard it in 95. I heard it in 93.
Yeah.
So he was doing his thing. Wasn't that fun? Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break.
Sounds good.
3-minute break. And we love those service announcements. They get better and better. Oh, the last time was so good about COVID.
I just put my contact lens here because it was bugging me.
Smart TVs and streaming services have taken over the television industry. VSC TV is proud to announce our presence on Apple TV and Roku to make watching your favorite shows even easier. You can access this service by downloading the Cablecast ScreenWeave app. Then choose Valley Shore Community TV from the list of channels. Select VSC TV Live to watch our channel in full HD. Or pick a show from our on-demand video library. VSC TV is your local Connecticut Midshore Valley digital connection.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Disasters won't wait for a pandemic to be over. So while your family is home more often, make a plan in case you have to deal with coronavirus and a natural disaster at the same time. Ready.gov/plan has the educational tools and resources to help your family prepare for emergencies and find information on how the coronavirus may affect your plan. Disasters won't wait, neither should you. Make a plan with your family today.
Valley Shore Community Television is constantly adapting to the demands of our viewers. Busy schedules are making it hard for viewers to watch shows when they air.
Television has changed dramatically. We don't have to be appointment viewers or listeners anymore.
No.
We can do this in real time.
VSC TV has made it easy to watch all our locally produced content online and when you want it. Visit vsctv.com and click on the Watch Online tab to watch live, or visit our local show playlist to easily navigate your favorite shows anywhere, anytime, and on any device. VSC TV is your local Connecticut Midshore Valley digital connection.
Welcome back. Welcome back. It's good to see you again. A blast. And it's just so musical with the voices out loud from the poets themselves. I'm going to take you back in history a little bit for the ups and downs of gay lit and what happened and didn't happen and why. Well, 1913. Of course, there was, before that, 3,000 years of it from Gilgamesh and Enkidu, right? Sumerian, but 1913, E.M. Forster wrote Maurice, but did not want it published while his mother was still alive. She lived a very long life. He showed the manuscript to his like-minded friends, including young Christopher Isherwood, big name. He, of course, is responsible for the libretto for Cabaret, you know, written by other people, but the original idea was his. Christopher said, yeah, why shouldn't it date? Forster had asked, does it date? Meaning he wrote it in 1913 and it's not going to be published till the 70s? Are you kidding me? Finally, the mother died, but Forster still delayed publication, fearing the novel would hurt his reputation. He wrote A Passage to India and so many really important novels that never touched on the subject of homosexuality or gayness or queerness or any of that. But flash forward to 71, and then we had the collected poems of Frank O'Hara. So there's kind of a tradition and a line, but also the line of repression and cultural opposition continues. Even though, NFL player comes out, first one,
Yes.
come on,
Just saw
come
that
on.
in the paper this morning.
Big time, hey. O'Hara had died after he was struck by a car one night on a beach on Fire Island in 1966. He was only 40. We will talk about him more in the next chapter. Yes, we will. I have a chapter for you. At the end, I wrote an elegy for him, which is a dedication and also the dedication for my book.
That's great.
But I'm going to read a poem of his. What appears to be yours, the root and acceptable connection, ochre, except meaning dream, partly where the will falters, a screw, a whole pair of shutters. You saw it, I went to the door, the umbrella apart from the hole, you see a slide. In other words, he just lets loose with stream of consciousness, which is, I do this, I do that, I'm doing this right at this very moment. What's with this guy? How could this be even popular? I'll read the first few lines of Ave Maria, which we were going to play at the end, but it gets a little too...
Right.
Mothers of America, let your kids go to the movies. Get them out of the house so they won't know what you're up to. It's true that fresh air is good for the body, but what about the soul? Steps. Another poem. How funny you are today, New York. He's the city poet, well known for celebrating New York City and the New York School of Poets. Also, Ginsberg's in the same crowd. They knew each other, admired each other. Everybody knows everybody.
In New York.
Yeah. And you have a list of interesting connections there.
This.
Yeah.
So, from 1955 on, there was somewhat of a breakthrough in American poetry, known variously as San Francisco Renaissance, or New York School, or Beat Generation, or Open Form, or whatever, but anticlimactic, anti-formalist style, says Ginsberg.
Yeah.
Oh, says Ginsberg, I don't think people nowadays realize what a strong hold the notion of stress and accent and stanza had on poetry in what were considered the serious literary magazines, Partisan Review, Hudson Review, Sewanee Review, Poetry. At that point, there seemed to be some sort of alliance between San Francisco open form people such as Snyder, Whalen, McCure, Olson, Creeley, Duncan, and the New York group of O'Hara, Schuler, and Ashbery.
Yay! They hooked up.
The common ground seemed to be admiration building on William Carlos Williams's American vernacular idiomatic diction and rhythm and spontaneous writing of Gertrude Stein. So this was quite a phalanx of new poets who liked each other to some extent. O'Hara's friendship with Ginsberg developed at the Cedar, although they had first been introduced by poets Jack Spicer and Robin Blazer in Cambridge in 1956. Ginsberg was impressed by O'Hara's early discovery of both Wieners and Corso, two poets who later became mostly identified with San Francisco Renaissance. In 1956, O'Hara lent him his copy of Herbert Marshall's translation of Mayakovsky's, which included a good translation of At the Top of My Voice.
Beautiful summary.
Is Wiener the correct pronunciation?
Yes, John Wieners.
Okay.
What a rebel.
Okay.
Oh, great. I fell in love with his poetry, then realized all the connections. But see, all the backstories are everybody's hanging out with everybody.
Yeah.
But one thing they had in common, blast formal poetry out of the room. Get rid of the closed form. Relax the rhythms and the rhymes. Follow your breath. And here we have a good example. How funny today you are, New York, like Ginger Rogers in Springtime, and St. Bridget's steeple leaning a little to the left, the actual church in Greenwich Village.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Here I have just jumped off out of a bed full of V-days. I got tired of D-days. And blue, you still there, still accepts me foolish and free. His color symbolism is blue is hope and joy and freedom, not the other kind of blue. All I want is a room up there and you in it. And even the traffic halts so thick. It is a way for people to rub up against each other. And when their surgical appliances lock, they stay together. He's lighthearted, whimsical, and completely free verse. So free that at times you have to stop yourself and say, wait a minute, is this poetry? Yes! Oh, that's what the 50s and 60s did for us.
Right.
Especially when the both coasts teamed up. Where's Lana Turner? Last time we read, Lana Turner has collapsed. That was his voice reading the poem. It was like, Lana Turner, get up. We need you. She's out eating and Garbo's backstage at the Met. Everyone's taking their coat off so they can show a rib cage to the rib watchers. And the park's full of dancers with their tights and shoes and little bags. It's just so New York and so celebratory. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Who else shall we celebrate today?
How about Adrienne Rich?
And you mentioned Gertrude Stein.
And Gertrude.
Wasn't that something?
Yeah.
Pull her in, And Gertrude was the rebel.
Yeah, we should read her sometime. I didn't bring any
but
of hers, but we should.
What's one of her famous lines about Oakland, California?
Don't know.
There is no there there.
There is no there there. Right, that is a famous line.
She was like, Hemingway's trying to learn the craft at her knee. He says, the trouble with you, Hem, is you're 90% Rotarian. In other words, cut the middle class stuff.
Yeah.
Get with it,
Yeah.
And of course, the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, a gem.
Yeah, that is.
She and her lover Alice are together forever, and then she says, well, I'm going to write a book, but it's in Alice's voice. She appropriated Alice's voice. Oh my gosh, what a history. Terrific. So back
great.
to her, and then you can trace.
So Adrienne Rich is the whole second. She very prolific, very in poetry and in her life. Longevity was a factor of her. Lasting.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
The 90s. Yeah.
So an early poem of hers is, it starts out as a commentary of, where women were in the 40s and so on. Aunt Jennifer's Tigers. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen, bright topaz denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the men beneath the tree. They pace in sleek, chivalric certainty. Aunt Jennifer's finger fluttered through her wool, find even the ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of Uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. When Aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with ordeals she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing, proud and unafraid. So she finds her freedom in her art. She's withheld as a woman in the first half of the 20th century, but her fingers make this beautiful tapestry of prowling tigers not afraid of man. It's just a very
marvelous,
beautiful,
that image.
simple little conceit that this poem is.
That says everything.
Yeah, so that's an early poem of hers.
And yet it had such sweet rhymes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Later poem, again, this is a short one. What kind of times are these? There's a place between two stands of trees where the grass grows uphill and the old revolutionary road breaks off into shadows near a meeting house abandoned by the persecuted who disappear into those shadows. I've walked there picking mushrooms at the edge of dread, but don't be fooled. This isn't a Russian poem. This is not somewhere else, but here, our country, moving closer to its own truth and dread, its own ways of making people disappear.
Wow.
I won't tell you where the place is, the dark mesh of woods, meeting the unmarked strip of light, ghost-ridden roads, leaf mold paradise. I already know who wants to buy it, sell it, make it disappear. And I won't tell you where it is. So why do I tell you anything? Because you still listen. Because in times like these, to have you listen at all, it's necessary to talk about trees. So she is just a genius poet.
And also intellectually empowered
Yeah.
to the nth degree. So, whoa, when she protests, you feel it. Oh, that's a marvelous poem.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I didn't write it.
It was a great choice. You read well, you get the passion.
I do. I love her poetry.
Give us another.
Okay, well, so she wrote some beautiful, she wrote 21 love poems in one of her volumes, and okay, there's so many that I liked very much. But this is a nice one because it's not a young love poem. It's number 3 of the 21. Since we're not young, weeks have to do time for years of missing each other. Yet only this odd warp in time tells me we're not so young. Did I ever walk the morning streets at 20, my limbs streaming with a purer joy? That I lean from any window over the city, listening for the future, as I listen here with nerves tuned for your ring? And you move toward me with the same tempo. Your eyes are everlasting. The green spark of blue-eyed grass of early summer. The green-blue wild cress washed by the spring. At 20, yes, we thought we'd live forever. At 45, I want to know even our limits. I touch you knowing we weren't born tomorrow, and somehow each of us will help each other live, and somewhere each of us must help each other die.
That is the perfect choice
That's
of a love poem.
Yeah.
And it covers a lifetime with the color symbolism and the imagery.
The blue-green.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize she was such a delicate poet as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that is moving. That is, and what a range. I mean, from the powerful intellect to the sensibility of
The tenderness and
tenderness. Marvelous. You read a few more of those, and you got the feel of how her love poems go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so, wow. Do you have anything protesting in there? Does she have a strident voice anywhere?
She does, but I don't know that I marked anything there. Oh, okay. Here is the map of our country. Here is the sea of indifference, glazed with salt. This is the haunted river flowing from brow to groin. We dare not taste its water. This is the desert where missiles are planted like corms. Mm-hmm. This is the breadbasket of foreclosed farms. This is the birthplace of a rockabilly boy. This is the cemetery of the poor who died for democracy. This is a battlefield from 19th century war. The shrine is famous. This is the sea town of myth and story. When the fishing fleets went bankrupt, here is where the jobs were, on the pier, processing frozen fish sticks, hourly wages and no shares. These are the other battlefields, Centralia, Detroit. Here are the forests primeval, the copper, the silver lodes. There are the suburbs of acquiescence, silence rising fume-like from the streets. This is the capital of money and dollar, whose spires flare up through the air inversions, whose bridges are crumbling, whose children are drifting blind in alleys pent between coiled rows of razor wire.
Wow.
I promised to show you a map to say, but this is a mural, then yes, let it be. These are small distinctions. Where do we see it from is the question.
Whoa.
So this was written from somewhere between 1988 and 1991.
Uh-huh.
And it's called From an Atlas of All the Difficult World. And
so politically aware.
So politically aware and so current.
So current and so understanding of the role of poverty and the separation between the suburbs. The description of the sleepy suburb was there so special. I forget the word she used, but it was so good. It was like,
the suburbs, these are the suburbs of acquiescence.
yes,
Yeah.
acceptance, acquiescence
sure.
of the money.
We're okay, we've got what we need, so let's not look too hard around at anything else,
Oh, that's a killer poem. And that's a beautiful ending for her retrospective. Thank you. Yeah.
I recommend anybody just pick up anywhere and read her.
You really
She's
got
excellent.
into her
Yeah.
in a wonderful way. That was a great spread.
I tried to go deep this time instead of going broad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what this show is today. Deep. Yeah. I'm gonna get a little elegy in.
Okay, yes, please do.
Oh, Frank, you died too young. I mean, that's so appropriate for a poetical topic and subject. Early death. And, Amy Lowell's lover dying young in a war and changing her whole life. Yeah. Early death, loss of love. This Bar Poems and Other Whimsies, and I dedicated it to Frank O'Hara because he was speaking to me, not so much in his style or rhythm, but in his loose lines. He was teaching me, as Whitman had done before. So, this is for you, Frank O'Hara. A dopey trope. Soap bubbles rising softly in the breeze, solace of dappled shadows on a late afternoon. Quote, what might have been, end quote, a projected narrative. What might have been the rest of your life, Frank? I mean, Adrienne Rich lived richly till, the 90s. Not her 90s, but into the 90s. What if you'd had another 40 years? Extended landscapes you might easily have seen in convex, inconsequential, refracted colors, floating above the English village on many adventures you might easily have had you not wandered off in the foggy night dreaming of Rothenburg turrets, of Dungare Castle in Kinvara, like a future retrospective of your life. Inevitably, soap bubbles drift into a solid object, and poof, gone with only verse left behind. Vacancy at the Cedar Bar, that's where they hung out and shared all the good stuff, the juicy details. Dearly missed, much like Dylan Thomas, he died at 39. Hart Crane died at 33, jumped off the boat. Crap! Your bubble alternatively could have lasted, drifted, transfigured into a giant disco ball above the dance floor of Studio 54. Slippery sex, sticky seats in the balconies, no bathroom doors in your imagined future. A dark catastrophe of personality. That's the phrase Frank used in his own poem.
A catastrophe of personality.
Like last time,
I like
yeah.
that phrase.
You clearly courted catastrophe of personality and, quote, it is never too late to have a happy childhood, end quote. Some still say, you might say, he loved me in an quote, he loved me in an overcompensating way. Had you made the 1980s, discovering, raving, smothering David Wojnarowicz, East Village op art popping up, floating over the piers. He didn't like Warhol. He didn't like his stuff. He thought he was a fake. Number 28, empty semi-scabrous anonymous sex, scrawled cartoons in chalk on all the empty walls. This is the 80s artists who found along the wharf places to perform, be themselves, artists. Cartoons in chalk on all the empty walls, skylights, consummated ecstasies of bohemian reveries you might have championed at MoMA. He was the big-time curator at MoMA. Very influential curator, very influential conversationalist. Blam! Pow! AIDS is prowling in all the corners. Oh, Frank, at least you missed that plague. All other bodies, bubbles of hope, brothers' lives broke on that wall. That's my elegy for Frank.
Yeah, that's...
A dopey trope. I mean, that's his style, his spirit.
That is a beautiful elegy.
Thank you.
And it's, the thing that it doesn't do, and I know this is down with faint praise, is it doesn't say he would have liked this or he would have liked that, because how would we know what somebody else would have liked? But what it does is celebrate who he was and what extended from him. What extended forward from him, from the place that he used as a platform.
What shadows he carried.
Exactly.
What influence.
Influence, right.
And what effect he had on all his fellow poets. They went nuts over his poetry. I couldn't see it at first. Okay, we're going to wrap in 1 minute, but I just want to read 2 lines. On the 50th anniversary of his death, July 26th, 1966, that was his death. So I wrote this book and published it in 2016. And of course, 50 years. Opera lover, pitch perfect seer, bird shit on my pen this morning, goose droppings on shoes, blue sky bulging above my breakfast table. It's been 50 years, buddy. Blessings on you, good man, with a good heart, art curator, painter, raconteur, buddy at the bar. That's for you, Frank, wherever you are.
Well, thank you, Frank, for having me back today.
What a wonderful
that's-
get-together.
yeah.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank
you helped me to
Thank you,
celebrate
Frank.
Gay Pride and Freedom Day
And Freedom Day.
and our fun with voices. Yeah, you brought so much to the show today. Thank you.
Thank
Wow.
you for having me.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
All right.
Till next time.